Hello, hello. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to chat with Natalie Kelda, author of Reflections of Lilje Damselfly. And we're doing something a little bit different today. Today we're actually going to do a workshop on writing with English as a second language because Natalie here is, oh gosh, forgive me, Danish
Yes, I'm Danish, yeah.
and grew up not speaking English. So please, want to give us a little bit of a background on that and then we'll jump into some questions.
I mean, I'm really fortunate in Denmark. You do learn English in school. Our schools are more rigorous with language in general because nobody outside of Denmark speaks Danish. What, 6 million people in Denmark, and then there's maybe a few 100,000 dotted around the world. So it's very small language. Um, But yeah, so we started when I was in school, I think we started learning English around 11, 12. I think now, I'm pretty sure my nephews are, the oldest is 16, and I think he started English at 7. It's moved downwards because it's sort of, they recognize it's really important that we all speak it. But yeah, so I didn't really speak any English at all. I hated English for the first 2 years in school, I think. But then it sort of clicked a little bit.
Mhm.
And I was really fortunate that my friend group, we were all quite language brains, I suppose.
Yeah.
So around 15, we started just for fun trying to speak English to each other, like in our
Mhm.
spare time. So by 16, I was fluent enough that I think I started the first books I read in English was Twilight because I wanted something easy. It
Fair.
was easy. Yeah, I didn't enjoy them, but I did read all of those in English, which was the first sort of proper fiction that I was reading on my own in English. But yeah, so I didn't really speak it until what, 20 years ago? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it is, as you said, it is unfortunately kind of the direction things are trending in, is if you come from a smaller country with maybe a more difficult language to learn, you have to kind of default to the one or the other. I will say, as someone who grew up, I learned English very young because my first language was French. I'm very grateful to have learned it at a very, very young age. I feel the older you get, the more difficult it becomes, at least like retention and
Yeah.
practice and everything as well.
Yeah. I think that's why they've moved it down so they start at 7 now
Mhm.
because it's just easier. The younger you are, the easier it is. Yeah.
No, 100%. Like, at least from my own experience, my dad's Lebanese, and I tried learning Arabic as a kid, and it just never clicked. And learning it as
Yeah.
an adult is just a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
That said though, so we've got quite a few questions we want to go through here, and we're gonna do it. It's gonna be, for those of you watching, it's gonna be very Q&A style. We want this to be just a workshop for people, an opportunity for people who do have English as a second language to kind of learn from us, from our experiences, and then go from there. What has your experience been like writing in English compared to writing in Danish?
I wrote in Danish for many, many years, so I didn't really consider ever switching to writing in English just because
Mhm.
when it's not your first language, it takes a while for it to really sort of seep in. But I think when I moved to the UK, I'd already lived abroad for 3 or 4 years at that time.
Mhm.
And I think having sort of more experiences with different types of English as well, because
Right.
I lived in Australia before and it's similar, but it is very different. Like you think, oh, it's just Australia, it'll be the same as it is in the UK, but it's not. It's sort of similar to how when you're learning to speak the language, to learn to switch over to write in English
Mhm.
instead of what your native language is, you sort of need to be at a stage where you can almost dream in the language, I find,
Yeah.
and you find yourself sometimes thinking in English instead of in Danish and stuff like that. For me, that took about 4 or 5 years of living in English speaking countries and primarily speaking English. It's different from everyone. There's a lot of people that live still in the country where they're native to
Mhm.
that have to sort of get it in secondary, but it is easier now because of all the media is in English. All social
Yeah.
media, pretty much everything with watching telly, stuff like that, is a lot of it is in English. I think for me the biggest challenge was finding all the words because
Yeah.
oh sorry. Danish has it's a very old language. So I can look up something in Old Norse and I will understand sort of pretty much everything. I've
Mhm.
read a lot of Old Norse, so that's why I can. But
Yeah.
any sort of Scandinavian person, they can read something in Old Norse and they'll be able to understand quite a lot of it because
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities. English is a very new language, and I think because of that, the the types of words are different. So in Danish, a lot of words have there's just more words in Danish basically, where English has had to borrow from so many other
Mhm.
languages because it's a younger language in general. So that's been the biggest challenge, I think, finding the words.
No, that makes sense. I think a lot of it is obviously practice, but the idea of learning English and like learning a foreign language through textbooks and through media is very different from learning a foreign language when you're in that country. I know for myself, I live in the States, so my French is very out of practice. I can speak it, I can read it. Writing it is a totally different ballgame just because you have all the conjunctions, all the vocabulary is one thing, but then all the grammar styles and this and that, like languages
Yeah,
become very complicated. Uh,
yeah. And what the conventions are, because textbooks are going to tell you one thing, but then in practice, it's different.
exactly.
So yeah,
And like I know for language like Arabic, there's different dialects throughout. Like Libyan Arabic is different from Iraqi Arabic, different from Lebanese Arabic. And it's not just different from a pronunciation standpoint, different words are used. So
yeah.
it is really interesting to kind of go about that. And it's to your point of what you said about Australia. It's different. And so, stemming off of that, onto the next question of what are some of the most common mistakes you see with specifically ESL authors?
I mean, I still do that as well. I think
Yeah.
it's just transplanting the grammar from your native language
Mhm.
into sort of grammar and syntax.
Mhm.
So you'll be writing out a sentence. It's transplanting the syntax. It's about the order of words and what
Right.
words you're supposed to use in what situation. And
Mhm.
that's another thing where you have to consume a lot of, I think, spoken media in English to sort of get the right wording down. And yeah, it's just it's a very common mistake. I have several people that are better read for that are um, also non-native English speakers, and I see the same sort of mistakes that I make, or maybe that I used to make but no longer make as often. I notice that immediately. I'm like, oh, that's from because I speak a couple of languages, and then I can usually pick out, oh, that's because you speak Spanish, or that's because you speak Danish. That you've got this slightly like sort of you mixed around the order of the words or something like that.
One
I think
hundred.
that's the
Wait,
most.
and that's definitely something I've seen before. And it's very real because these are things that you grow up, at least as a native English speaker, you grow up learning and without realizing it. So it's this is actually a meme that I've picked up because I've seen this so many times of the order of adjectives in specific.
Yes. Yeah, with
Um,
whether it's color first and
yes,
size
so
and
I've got it here. It's in English, it's opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose, noun.
yeah,
So you can have a lovely little old rectangular green French silver whittling knife, but if you mess with that word order at all, it just sounds completely off to a native speaker.
yeah,
It's why none of us could write it out. But that's why as size comes before color, green great dragons can't exist. They're great green dragons.
yeah,
And it's these little things like that where it's like, oh, it sounds right. But you have to have a base level of understanding and a base level of experience in that language to know what actually sounds right and what's convention.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's also really, that's probably the most difficult thing is writing dialogue.
Hmm.
If you're supposed to write a native English speaker or what's perceived as a native English speaker, I know a lot of us write fantasy and sci-fi where that might not be the actual language, but it's supposed to read smoothly like it's a native English speaker, and that can be really difficult because spoken language is so different again from what we learn in the textbooks.
Not just different from what you learn in textbooks, but also just different from the other languages you already know. So
Yeah.
then you have to mix and match and
Oh yeah,
keep
and
them
it
all in
depends
order.
on like yeah. I mean, I would write an Australian character very different to someone from Yorkshire where I live now.
Hmm.
Because I mean, an Australian farmer like where I used to live, it's just they speak really differently. I I wasn't really understood when I moved to the UK. Nobody understood what I said because I sounded like my accent was broad Australian, and I would use words that I didn't realize they don't use here. Where it's still English, but it's different words. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that. Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Oh Lord. Yeah, the order of operations, I guess that's a math term, but the order of operations for words is unique. What should ESL writers not worry about as much as they think that they should? So what do you see authors focus on that we don't necessarily that you don't necessarily think is that important?
I mean, this is something I've definitely felt myself, and I
Mhm.
think this is what I see with most people where they're writing or speaking a language that's not their first language is they're so scared of doing it wrong or
Mhm.
like being like writing bad or something, which I mean, you do that even as a native writing in your native
Yeah, I was gonna
language, but
say, as someone who's writing in English, I mess up all the time. So,
yeah, that's the thing. So it's okay to mess up because you can always fix it and you can have help to fix it. But I
mhm,
think just not being scared of showing it to people, like find people that you really trust who speak that language natively and then get them to have a look at it, even if it's just little snippets, if you don't want to share the whole piece
mhm,
at first, because it's quite daunting when you start out getting beta readers and stuff like that. But yeah, just not don't be afraid to show it because in general, from what I've found is native English speakers are just super impressed with anyone who speaks their language because I mean you speak French, which is quite unusual. A lot of
mhm.
English speakers don't speak a second language,
Yeah,
or their
they don't
second
have
language
to.
is very like it's as poor as my third language, which is German,
Mhm.
or my fourth language, which is Swedish. Like it's their levels. There's levels to it, and usually, if you can sit down and you can write something in English that's somewhat passable, an
Mhm.
English speaker is generally going to be like really impressed and will want to help you if you're asking for help.
No,
So yeah, just not being afraid of showing it to someone who can help because that's where you learn. Like
yeah.
you need to have a native speaker help you pick out those little mistakes that you can't hear or see yourself.
No, and I completely agree with that. I think there's a lot of, I don't know if the right word is stigma, but there's a lot of concern from non-native, from ESL writers where it's a sense of embarrassment. But there's nothing to be embarrassed about. You're coming in like you can pretty much, I don't know, if you're reading, if you're writing, if you're speaking, you can tell if someone has English as a second language or not. And I'm gonna try my best to not be political here, but I think there's also an innate level of racism and whatnot that plays a role. Um, when people read ESL and whatnot, but there's an element where like you've got to recognize that this isn't their second that this isn't their native language.
Mhm.
And these mistakes that you're making or whatnot, you just need to practice. And there's nothing to be
Yeah.
ashamed of. It's really cool to speak multiple languages, and it's not living in the US, it's not as prevalent as you would hope it to be. Especially
Mhm.
like for me, speaking French in the US isn't that common, mostly because
Yeah,
you're gonna
it's
learn
more
it.
common here, but yeah, it's not
But
over there, is it?
but if you're in the States, you're gonna learn a second language, learn Spanish. That one's more relevant and it's more day to day, it's more practical. But I think I completely agree with what you said. Don't be ashamed of it. It's a really impressive thing. It's a really important thing to know. And you just have to keep putting yourself out there because you're not gonna know what mistakes you're making, especially since, like to your point of dialogue. You're not going to know what good dialogue sounds like unless you put yourself in that uncomfortable position of having those conversations.
Be brave, share
Mhm.
it, find some critique partners that can really sort of help elevate your stuff from something that it's clear that it's written by someone who's not native to English, and getting it up to that spot where sometimes people can't tell. Um,
And
yeah,
we can use us as an example. I can wholeheartedly say you're a better writer than me in English. And I've been writing in English for a lot longer than you have. So just because it's your second language does not mean that it isn't as good or even better than someone who has it as a first language. So don't knock yourself before you at least talk to people about it.
yeah, and also just have patience. I think everything happens really fast today,
Mhm.
and like everyone thinks that you can. All the language apps and that, it's always about how fast you can learn the language, but that's not really what writing is about. Just keep practicing because it's taken me, oh God, nearly 10 years to where I am today of writing in English. So it takes a long time. And I think the first probably million words I wrote in English were not good. So
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
keeping on.
and I
Yeah.
think to your point with the applications and all that, like things like Duolingo, I think they mean well, but they've gamified the experience. So I know like my mother and I have both gone on and off Duolingo trying to learn Arabic because my dad speaks Arabic. And we'll say, hey, like we'll say something in Arabic and he'll look at us and go, nobody says that.
Yeah.
That is like that might be factually true, but that isn't how it's actually said. So I think you have to have a level of immersion outside of just an app or a textbook.
Yeah. It's a good starting point, but
Hmm.
I think if you're still you having to use things like Duolingo or like you're probably not ready to write in that language. You have
Yes.
to sort of be able to follow a conversation and stuff. And Duolingo can, yeah, it's a good starting point. It can start you off, but you need to get to another point. And that's a good thing about things like YouTube because no matter what language it is you want, you can watch. I mean, I've watched Peppa Pig in Spanish on YouTube to like before I went to South America so I could speak it a little better. It's just things like that. So you can always immerse yourself. And it sounds silly, but things like kids programs,
Hmm.
uh it's actually a really good way to also learn how you say certain things. I mean,
Well,
obviously they can't do sort of more adult language, but they can do quite, and it's got quite a lot of different concepts in it because it's usually each episode is about a thing. It's a really
yeah,
good way to learn.
kids television is meant to be teachable moments and they're meant to be learning experiences. So no better way to do it. I completely agree with that. So the next question we have are, what are the biggest strengths you notice in ESL writing compared to native English writing?
I think inventiveness
Mhm.
because you've grown up with you know a different tradition of because even though Denmark is very close to England, but our storytelling techniques are very different.
Yeah.
And I've tried to get rid of it for a while, but I'm actually trying now to claw some of that back and sort of purposely use that sort of storytelling, but putting it into an English narrative because you can just create worlds in a completely different way, and your brain works in a different way when you speak multiple languages.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just being inventive and being able to sort of have a different voice without even trying to, you'll be able to tell a completely different story, even if you had the exact same plot as an English native English speaker. You're going to tell it in a different way because of how your brain works and how the storytelling that you've grown up with is different.
And I think that's a very, very important point, especially because like obviously we champion indie, but especially as the world kind of trends towards monopolies and oligopolies and whatnot, you have very few different methods of storytelling, very few different methods of media and this and that. So it's important to keep your horizons broadened and to keep challenging, oh, is this the best way to tell a story? What if you want to do this or that? And I think language is a great way to go about it because it's a different way to digest culture and experience culture as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So the next question I got is, at what point do you believe a writer should prioritize clarity over stylistic ambition?
That's
That's
a
tough.
difficult one. I think I'm not sure. I've really sort of I think probably on a subconscious level I do know where, but usually what I do is I'll write it the way I want, and then I'll let someone read it, and
Mhm,
they'll tell me this doesn't make sense or the sentence is so awkward because
mhm.
too it's made too Danish, so it doesn't make properly sense.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's a very difficult one to navigate. And I think for the most part, I would say write it the way you would want it to be from your perspective, from your voice, but then have several different people look at it. Don't just rely on one person.
Mhm.
Because if you're unlucky, that one person just doesn't understand it. Where if you have three or four people look at it, if they all say the same thing, you know that there's something wrong, and you need to sort of tweak some of it. And yeah, have a little bit of a back and forth. That's why I'm really better readers are great, but also especially critique partners,
Yeah.
someone that you sort of go back and forth with, and maybe you read some of their stuff as well because you'll learn from that too. Use someone where you can do a little bit back and forth, so you can figure out what is it about a sentence or style that doesn't make full sense in English, and how can you tweak it so it does, but you still retain what you're bringing to the table, basically.
No, no, it makes total sense because at the end of the day, there will be a level of compromise because you want, as much as you want that story to go through, I think we see it anytime you read a translated work or whatnot. You might not get the full essence, but you get enough to understand what is going on and the contextualize around it. I know there's so many instances, I'm not going to try to think of any off the top of my head, but I know there's so many instances where a word might exist in Danish, but that one word is a sentence in English or vice versa,
Yeah.
because there is no one specific word to encapsulate that feeling or that emotion or that, vocabulary changes.
Mm.
And it's not as black and white as I think a lot of people realize. That
That's another thing. I just quickly
no, no,
uh
no.
try and write something in your native language, but then try and translate to English, but you're not doing a word for word translation.
Yeah.
Capturing the same essence. That's a really good exercise to try, and also do it the other way around, where you write it in English and then try and translate it back. Translation is just, it's fascinating. And one day I will have time to translate my books back to Danish. And I've got other ones that I want to translate to English, but that's a
No,
really brilliant exercise because you'll see what stylistic choices seem to fit with the mood of what you were going for in whatever language you're writing.
no, I think that's an incredible point you just made. Not all translation needs to be word for word.
Mm,
And I think the best translated works are the ones that capture the essence rather than the verbatim. Because anyone could take a book, copy and paste it into Google Translate and flip it, because that's what it'll give you.
yeah,
Um,
that's the thing. That's why we need human translators.
mhm,
I know there's some very big publishing houses that are getting rid of them now, but it's you all the nuance is going to be lost. Like
exactly.
all that, because you need the mood and the tone, and yeah, there's
And
so much
it's
thought
it's the
behind it.
nuance and it's the nuance that has the storytelling. That's where the
Yeah,
storytelling is held.
yeah.
And so I'm looking now, we have 3 minutes left. I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
Final question. What resources do you know of or do you think are available for ESL writers that you would recommend?
So where I got started, I think the website's still there. It's called Scrib or File,
Mhm.
like Scrib, and then O and then File with a PH. That's a critique site. So you have to have a login, so you can't really see anything from the front end. But that also means that AI can't scrape it because it's password protected.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
but that's where I've sort of found my feet in English.
Mhm.
And without that, because it's you get line critiques, you will get like you have 500 words on the page and you'll get 200 words, 2,000 words back comments
Oh,
on what
wow.
you can check.
And this is
It's
this is just other people critiquing each other.
Yeah, and I mean, what
Wonderful.
I did is I found like-minded people and then got into groups, and
Mhm.
I mean, some of them are still good friends today, 10 years
Nice.
later. So it's just that's a really good one to find critique partners if you don't know where to start.
Mhm.
Um, and also just always have like a thesaurus, a dictionary, stuff like that. You just need to be. able to look everything up and double check words and things like that. I mean, I think even if you write in your native language, you should probably have those.
You
Um,
can only say big and really so many times. You gotta thesauruses go a long way, and I think it improves writing, and it's something we all have access to. See, these workshops are some of my favorite because this is where you can really go behind the scenes of how does this happen? How do we get this done? I'm gonna keep thinking about what you said about the essence of and doing the exercise where you take a sentence and you translate it, but not word for word. You just translate it to make it.
the meaning, yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy. I really like that. Well, unfortunately, we have less than a minute left, but for those of you that stuck around, we appreciate it. We hope you got something out of this. We hope you can take it away and learn from there. And this isn't necessarily just for English. The things that we talked about, I believe, would go through any language. If you have
Yeah.
writing in French, French is a first language, Spanish is a second language. So you use it. There are resources. I'll put the link to Scribophile down below. I found it. The website still
Oh,
exists.
brilliant. Brilliant.
Um, and yeah, if you've made it this far, check out Natalie Kelda. She wrote Reflections of Lilje Damselfly, and it's wonderful. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
But
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you everybody for taking part. Thanks, Natalie, for joining us, and we'll see you all soon.